This is Mission Control Houston. Good morning. Today is September 24th, 2019. Right now you're getting a live view of the Yoshinobu Launch Complex. Sitting on the pad of Site 2 of the launch complex is the H2 transfer vehicle called HTV on its 8th mission, HTV-8, sitting on top of an H-IIB rocket. The Yoshinobu Launch Complex is in Tanegashima, a southern island just south of the main island of Japan and the southern island of Kyushu. Right now we're counting down to a launch at 11:05 a.m. Central Time on September 24th, 1:05 a.m. Japan time over in Tanegashima. Here's a live look at the H-IIB rocket. Again, on top is the HTV-8. Inside HTV-8 is about 4 tons of supplies, cargo, food, and experiments. Again, we're counting down to a launch at 11:05 a.m. Central Time. Over at the Takasaki Range Control Center, JAXA and Mitsubishi Heavy personnel looking after the launch of the rocket, tracking down for that countdown. Here in Mission Control Houston, good report so far as we're counting down to that launch. This is a live view from Mission Control Houston in Houston, Texas. The International Space Station Flight Control Room now led by Flight Director Greg Whitney. Visiting vehicle officers in the room communicating with HTV flight controllers over in Tsukuba, Japan. The Tanegashima Space Center, just south of the main island of Japan, but towards the center. HTV flight controllers will take over shortly after launch and see through the vehicle's trajectory to meet up with the ultimate destination, the International Space Station, controlled from this view right here. Again, everything on track for that launch on time, 11:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. September 25th out of the pad at the Yoshinobu Launch Complex. Getting a good look at the H-IIB rocket here. The H-IIB will be carrying the 4-ton spacecraft into orbit. It'll be about a 15-minute ascent before the HTV is separated from the rocket. You can see the 4 strap-on boosters at the bottom of the rocket. That'll help with the initial lift. Those solid rocket boosters will burn for nearly 2 minutes, about 1 minute 54 seconds before they are separated. And that core stage that contains liquid fuel, liquid hydrogen, and liquid oxygen will continue to burn for 5 minutes and 47 seconds total through the first stage of the vehicle's travel to low Earth orbit. You can see a sort of exploded view here. Again, that first stage burns for the first 5 minutes 47 seconds. You can see the payload fairing at the very top. That will separate at about 3 minutes 40 seconds. And the HTV in the second stage will continue to burn after that first stage separates for another almost 8 minutes. Again, about 4 tons of cargo inside the Kunotari, or White Stork, the name of the H2 transfer vehicle that will be launching here in just under 30 minutes. You can see the exploded view of the HTV here. Inside the pressurized logistics carrier is about over 5,000 pounds of cargo, and in the unpressurized segment is just over 3,000 pounds of the lithium-ion batteries and associated adapter plates that'll be part of a series of upgrades to replace lithium-ion, the aging nickel-hydrogen batteries that are on the outside of the station, and store the power provided by the station's solar arrays, and be replaced with the newer lithium-ion batteries. You can see the exposed pallet is actually accessible once HTV is docked to the International Space Station. It's accessible robotically. Actually, towards the top of this view, you can see where that grapple fixture is, where the robotic arm will actually pull the pallet and the lithium-ion batteries out from the unpressurized logistics module. The avionics and propulsion module will carry the HTV throughout its flight, and on the pressurized logistics carrier, power will be provided by the solar arrays you can see actually throughout the vehicle. That'll provide power throughout its flight over the next 4 days until it rendezvous this Saturday, early in the morning Central Time. Again, those lithium-ion batteries will be a key component to upgrading the International Space Station. There are 6 lithium-ion batteries and associated adapter plates inside of that pallet in the unpressurized portion of the H2 transfer vehicle. Again, once it is docked to the International Space Station, we're looking for it to berth to the nadir port of the Harmony module. You can see from this configuration of the space station what it will look like soon. The HTV-8 at the very forward end on the Earth-facing side towards the bottom. The robotic arm will be able to pull out the pallet with the lithium-ion batteries and adapter plates from the unpressurized portion of the vehicle. There'll be sort of a handoff maneuver with the Japanese robotic arm that you can see towards the forward end of the screen and the forward end of the station on the exposed facility outside of the Japanese experiment module, the Kibo. There'll be sort of a handoff where the robotic arm will hand off to that exposed pallet robotic arm. Then the Canadarm2 will make its way to the truss segment where you can see it now in this view and pull over those lithium-ion batteries and the pallet. Because the lithium-ion batteries and the associated adapter plates are to be replacing the far port side of the International Space Station. From this view, the very far right. There'll be a series of spacewalks next month to complete the installation of that work. Some of the work will be done robotically to configure the work site for 2 spacewalking astronauts that will be performing the swap over a series of spacewalks again later in next month, October. On the inside of the HTV, again, about 4 tons of cargo total, but inside is plenty of experiments and provisions for the crew. Those will be accessible through the nadir port, or the Earth-facing port of the Harmony module, where astronauts themselves will be able to enter the vehicle and get some of those goods from the inside. Getting another view. This is again live from Site 2 of the Yoshinobu Launch Complex. The H-IIB vehicle and the HTV cargo vehicle on the very top. Again, everything's tracking for a launch on time at 11:05, specifically 11:05:05 a.m. Central Time. This will put it in the proper phasing to catch up with the International Space Station this Saturday over its flight in low Earth orbit over these next few days to move slowly and incrementally closer to the orbiting laboratory, 250 miles above the Earth. Space station, as you can see on this map, located at the southwestern coast of Chile on a northeastern track. At the time of launch, the International Space Station will be flying right over the Democratic Republic of Congo, over South Central Africa, and again, this will put it in that right phasing so that the HTV, which will be launching on the far east, on the southern islands of Japan, will be able to meet up with the International Space Station again for a rendezvous Saturday morning. (11:05 a.m. Central Time is an instantaneous launch window today, launching from the Tanegashima Space Center. Again, the Takasaki Range Control Center, that's part of that launch complex, will be monitoring the launch. You can see here's the island of Tanegashima on the southern end of that island. The entire Tanegashima Space Center with the Takasaki Range Control Center to the south, the Yoshinobu Launch Complex, and the H-2B launch vehicle and the HTV-8 on top at the northeastern part of the launch complex, a few miles away. Here's a more detailed view of the launch complex itself. We're lifting off from Launch Pad 2 today. Now, this launch itself has been rescheduled to today, September 24th, U.S. time. It was originally scheduled about 2 weeks ago on September 10th, U.S. time, September 11th, Japan time, but was scrubbed due to a fire at the movable launch pad exit hole during the countdown operation. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries investigated the issue and confirmed that there was a high possibility that the fire would spread due to static electricity generated by oxygen that was dripping from engine exhaust port during the propellant filling operation. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries has taken corrective measures and ensured that we'll have a normal countdown for today. Again, everything's on track. NASA international partners all on track for the HTV-8 vehicle to meet up with the International Space Station. Again, looking forward to that launch in just about 21 minutes. Now again, after that investigation and ensuring that the HTV vehicle was ready for launch today, everything was on track. The experiments inside were not unloaded because there was no time-sensitive biological experiments inside. Earlier this week, the H-2V vehicle was rolled out to the pad. Here you can see some of that pad rollout video. Going over to Site 2, getting into its configuration where it's sitting now, just after midnight Japan time. Everything's set and configured for a launch. Again, those 4 strap-on boosters will help with the initial lift of the vehicle for the first 2 minutes of its flight before they are separated, and the liquid fuel of the first stage continues to burn for an additional almost 4 minutes. Now again, the HTV vehicle itself separated into several portions, including a pressurized compartment for cargo that's accessible to the crew from the inside of the space station, and an unpressurized portion that could be accessed from the robotic arm in the outside of the space station and grab that pallet with the lithium-ion batteries and adapter plates attached. Now on the inside of the pressurized logistics carrier, again, are just about 5,000 pounds of goods, including experiments, food, and supplies, and hardware. Some of the experiments include an extension to the Cell Biology Experiment Facility. This one's called CBEF or CBEF. The portion that's in the HTV is the CBEF-L. It's an extension to that hardware that investigates some biological experiments and included a centrifuge to have variable gravity. The International Space Station being the only place where you can have this variable gravity all the way down to the microgravity environment. There's also an experiment called SOLIS, S-O-L-I-S-S. This is a small optical communication system that'll be testing a different form of communications and cooling that is provided by an EFU adapter. This will be sort of a demonstration for future technology that can be used for broadband data communication in space. Now there's experiments for biological experiments as well as hardware for data and communications. Another experiment called Hourglass will be investigating the relationship between gravity and the behavior of granular materials such as regolith that covers the surface of planets and planetary-like bodies. The Hourglass facility is armed with an high-definition camera that'll record video at 30 frames per second and see how these different materials, these different regoliths, move in the microgravity environment. For those of you just joining, you're getting a live view of the Yoshinobu Launch Complex. Sitting at Site 2 is the H-IIB launch vehicle, and on top, HTV-8, that's the H-2 transfer vehicle. We're counting down to a launch in just about 16 minutes, 11:05 a.m. Central Time today. At the Yoshinobu Launch Complex, the weather itself looking good. Again, everything on track for a launch on time at 11:05 Central, 1:05 a.m. Japan time out at the launch complex. It's about 73 degrees Fahrenheit, partly cloudy, just shy of 23 degrees centigrade. A nice cooler afternoon and clear skies for the launch today. Again, at the time of launch, the International Space Station will be flying right over the middle of Africa, now just east off the coast of South America, just at the southern border of Brazil, making its way on a northeastern track toward the African continent. This will put the HTV and the International Space Station in the proper phasing, where the HTV will meet the International Space Station this Saturday. We're looking at a capture time on Saturday about 6:15 a.m. Central Time. Now, the launch of HTV today on September 24th comes just one day before the launch of a new crew to the International Space Station. Currently, 6 crew members aboard the International Space Station, but by the time HTV arrives this Saturday, there'll be 9 crew members aboard. Here's the current crew as we see them on board today, September 24th. From the top left, we have Commander of the International Space Station, Alexei Ovchinin. Going clockwise, we have Nick Hague of NASA, Luca Parmitano of the European Space Agency, Alexander Sfortsov of Roscosmos, Drew Morgan of NASA, and Christina Cook of NASA. They are now aboard the International Space Station towards the end of their workday. It'll be Christina Cook at the helm of the robotic arm this Saturday. She'll be leading the operations for capturing HTV as it makes its approach to the International Space Station. Launching tomorrow aboard the Soyuz vehicle on MS-15 will be 3 new crew members. They include NASA's Jessica Meir, Oleg Skripochka of Roscosmos, and Hazza Ali Al-Mansouri of the United Arab Emirates. These 3 crew members will be launching tomorrow morning Central Time. You can tune into NASA TV to see their launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. They'll rendezvous quickly. They'll do a 4-orbit rendezvous to catch up with the International Space Station and dock to the Russian side of the station later in the evening. The docking scheduled at 2:45 p.m. Central Time. Again, there'll be 9 crew members aboard. There's the Soyuz MS-15 you can see at the aft end of the station. They'll be joining the 6 crew members aboard to make 9 total, and they'll do an 8-day handover. Alexei Ovchinin, Nick Hague, and Hazza Ali Al-Mansouri will board the Soyuz MS-12 on October 3rd, and make their way down to the Kazakh steppes. 6 crew members of Expedition 61 will continue throughout the rest of the calendar year. Now again, there will be 9 crew members on board the International Space Station when HTV arrives, with Christina Cook at the controls of the station's robotic arm to grab the 4 tons of cargo. 3 crew members will depart on October 3rd, and Expedition 61 will take over upon the time of undocking. And here is your Expedition 61 crew. From left to right, we have NASA's Andrew Morgan, Alexander Sfortsov of Roscosmos, Luca Parmitano of the European Space Agency, And then joining here tomorrow will be Oleg Skripocha and Jessica Meir. And to round out the Expedition 61 crew, her long-duration stay, almost 11 months long, will be Christina Cook. Nine minutes to launch at this time. HTV-8 on the top of the H-IIB vehicle, launch vehicle that's lifting out from the Yoshinobu Launch Complex of Tanegashima. Now just 8 minutes to launch. Counting down to 11:05 a.m. Central, 1:05 a.m. September 25th Japan time for the launch. Again, it's about 15 minutes from the time of liftoff to the time that the H2 transfer vehicle is separated from the launch vehicle. Going through some of the flight sequence after liftoff, the solid rocket boosters and that first stage containing liquid fuel will burn for 1 minute 54 seconds until the solid rocket boosters themselves burn out. They'll be jettisoned in pairs. There's 4 strap-on boosters divided by solid rocket boosters A and B. They'll separate in pairs about 3 seconds apart from each other. First pair will jettison about 2 minutes 4 seconds, and then 2 minutes 7 seconds into the flight, that second pair will jettison as that first stage continues to carry the HTV up into orbit. That first stage will burn for a total of 5 minutes and 47 seconds. And when the vehicle is at fair enough altitude, at about 3 minutes 40 seconds, the fairing itself will jettison and reveal the HTV vehicle underneath. Here's a nice countdown of the flight sequence. Again, 5 minutes 47 seconds is when that first stage will cut off. It'll enter a short coast period of about 7 seconds before that first stage separates from the vehicle. The second stage ignites just after 6 minutes into the flight and carries it for another 8 minutes and 19 seconds. Now, after the second stage cuts off, there will be another short coast period before that second stage physically separates from the HTV vehicle. And that separation occurring just about 15 minutes after liftoff. Once the HTV is in a good orbit, we'll confirm that the HTV's solar panels that are along the outside of the vehicle are receiving good power. And then HTV control over in Tsukuba, Japan, will take over the flight of the vehicle for the next few days until its rendezvous to the International Space Station this Saturday morning. Now 11 a.m. Central Time, 1 a.m. out at the pad, 5 minutes until launch. A nice pan of the vehicle, that fairing up at the top, the white fairing. Underneath is the HTV-8 vehicle and the 4 tons of cargo inside. 3,000 pounds of which is lithium-ion batteries and associated adapter plates on the pallet that will be retrieved robotically from the outside, and the rest will be cargo on the inside retrieved by the crew. This includes many experiments as well as some hardware, tools, and food. Some of the tools inside include special spacewalking tools that will be used for the alpha magnetic spectrometer repair. That'll be scheduled later in Expedition 61. Those tools specially designed to work with such a delicate piece of hardware. There's also oxygen and nitrogen tanks, some specialized hardware for the water recovery system, as well as the treadmill. Again, in the pressurized compartment of the vehicle, about 5,000 pounds of cargo. Mission Control Houston, following along from the milestones provided by the HTV control and Takasaki Range Control over at the Tanegashima Space Center that are overseeing the launch. Everything still on track for a launch just 3 minutes from now. The International Space Station, passing over the Atlantic Ocean, now crossing over into the continent of Africa, the southern border of the country of Liberia. It's on a northeastern track and will be located over Africa at the time of launch being over at the east at one of the southern islands of Japan. You can see there on this map. Everything's still on track from here in Mission Control Houston and out of the Range Control Center and HTV Control. Less than 2 minutes to launch.
Followed by the pressurization of the liquid oxygen and hydrogen systems of the second station, and they are now complete.
flame deflector 冷却開始
Cooling initiates at the flame deflector.
1 minute until launch. Everything looking good so far.
打ち上げ1分前です
T-minus 1 minute.
30 seconds to launch. Again, the solid rocket boosters and that core stage, the first stage containing liquid fuel, will carry the rocket through the first 1 minute 54 seconds of its launch. Everything's still on track, 10 seconds to launch. Getting a good view of the engine underneath, now igniting.
全システム準備完了
All systems are go.
メインエンジンスタート
We have main engine ignition.
T0 and liftoff of the HTV-8 and the H-IIB rocket carrying its way 4 tons of cargo to the International Space Station.
8号機は日 2019年9月25日午前1時5分5秒に
Lighting up the night sky over southern Japan. Everything looking good through the flight so far.
Vehicle number 8 with dormitory on board from the JAXA Tanegashima.
Those 4 strap-on solid rocket boosters will carry the vehicle through the first 1 minute 54 seconds of the launch.
打ち上げ以降ロケットの管制は吉野発射管制塔から竹崎総合司令塔に引き継がれています。
Following liftoff, the operation control of the launch vehicle has been switched from the blockhouse to the range control center.
ロケットは現在徐々に南東方向の太平洋上を飛行しています。
Now 1 minute into the flight. "20 more seconds before those solid rocket boosters burn out. Everything looking good so far. The vehicle itself heading towards the southeast to get in the right phasing to meet up with the International Space Station. You can see the solid rocket boosters beginning to burn out. We should see them separate in pairs coming up here in just a few seconds. There's the first pair of solid rocket boosters separating. And the second pair. Now that core stage will continue to burn until 5 minutes 47 seconds into the flight, burning liquid fuel, liquid hydrogen, and liquid oxygen. Good confirmation of booster separation. 2 minutes 47 seconds into the flight, 3 minutes left of this first stage. Three minutes 47 seconds into the flight, everything looking good so far. That first stage will continue to burn for another 2 minutes. Four minutes 47 seconds into the flight, 1 minute left of this stage. Everything continued to be on track throughout the flight of the HTV today and the H-IIB rocket, performing nominally. Again, 5 minutes 47 seconds into the flight will be the cutoff of that first stage. It'll enter into a 7-second coast period before the first and second stage separates. Another 7 seconds until the second stage is ignited. Everything continuing to be on track. 5 minutes, 27 seconds into the flight, 20 more seconds of the first stage burning. Switching to animation right after the burnout of that first stage. And confirmation that that first stage did successfully cut off. Second stage burning now. First and second stages separated. This second stage will burn for well over 8 minutes, 8 minutes 19 seconds. It'll be just over 15 minutes until the HTV itself is inserted into a good orbit. Coming up on 7 minutes into the flight, everything looking good so far. Eight minutes into the flight, HTV continuing on a nominal track heading towards the southeast to get into the right phasing to meet up with the International Space Station, which is just about to cross over into an orbital nighttime as it crosses over the Mediterranean Sea towards the western coast of Greece. Meanwhile, the HTV heading on a southeasterly course over the Pacific Ocean to get into a good orbit. Again, it's about 15 minutes from the time of liftoff to the time of orbital insertion, and the HTV separates from the launch vehicle. Ten minutes into the flight, that second stage continuing to burn as expected. Everything on track as the HTV makes its way through its ascent milestones. There are only a few milestones left. That second stage burns for well over 8 minutes total. We're now 10 minutes into the flight. We could expect a cutoff about 14 minutes 20 seconds into the flight. It'll enter into a short coast period. That coast lasting just about 51 seconds before there's physical separation between the HTV and the second stage of the H-IIB rocket. "11 minutes, 30 seconds into the flight. HTV-8 and the second stage of the vehicle performing nominally. Less than 3 minutes until the second stage cuts off and the vehicle enters a short coast period. Again, the phasing here gets it into an orbit to catch up with the ultimate destination of HTV-8, the International Space Station, where it will arrive on Saturday morning, capture scheduled for 6:15 a.m. Central Time. The International Space Station itself crossing over into an orbital nighttime now just north of the Black Sea over the southern border of Ukraine. "13 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight, everything looking good so far for that second stage. Expect a cutoff just under a minute from now. Again, after that cutoff, it'll enter into a short coast period before the physical separation between the HTV and the second stage. "14 minutes, 10 seconds into the flight. Should expect a cutoff here in just a few seconds. Second stage has cut off, now just waiting for confirmation of physical separation between the HTV and the second stage. And confirmation of separation. Getting a look at HTV control over in Tsukuba, Japan. A good flight of the vehicle. Looking back at the launch pad where the H-IIB rocket took off just 15 minutes ago. HTV mission control over in Tsukuba, Japan will take over the flight from here, now that the HTV has separated from the launch vehicle. There's HTV control over in Tsukuba, Japan. Just recently we saw the Launch Control Center, that's the Takasaki Range Control Center over in Tanegashima. This HTV Control Center over in Tsukuba, Japan, just northeast of Tokyo. It'll be these teams here that'll see through the flight of HTV over the next few days to rendezvous at the station early Saturday morning. Now that HTV has physically separated, just waiting for confirmation that the vehicle itself is drawing power in a good configuration after separation. And HTV mission control will take over from there. Again, you're looking at the HTV flight control room over in Tsukuba, Japan. These teams will oversee the flight of HTV on its route in low Earth orbit to catch up with the International Space Station. Again, the HTV Mission Control Center over in Tsukuba, Japan. That's just northeast of the major city of Tokyo, the center island. and receive confirmation that the HTV is in a good orbital insertion, is drawing power from those solar rays, and it's on its way to meet up with the International Space Station in just a few days. A short recap of today's activities: launching on time at 11:05 a.m. Central Time. Made a nominal ascent over 15 minutes before it was separated and entered into orbit. Teams here at the HTV Mission Control Center in Tsukuba, Japan will oversee the flight of HTV as it makes its way around the Earth, now over the South Pacific Ocean east off the coast of Australia after entering into orbit. It'll continue to orbit the Earth for the next few days until it rendezvous with the International Space Station at 6:15 a.m. scheduled time, Central Time, on Saturday, September 28th. It'll be Christina Cook at the controls of the station's robotic arm to physically grab the HTV as it makes its way to its capture position, flying in tandem with the International Space Station. And robotics controllers will take over after that to install it onto the International Space Station. Before that happens, though, there'll be 3 new crew members launching and arriving aboard the International Space Station, a total of 9 crew members aboard the space station by the time HTV arrives on Saturday. Be sure to tune in to the launch of Jessica Meir, Oleg Skripochka, and Hazza Ali Al-Mansouri tomorrow morning. We'll start our coverage at 8 a.m. Central Time for the launch at 8:57 a.m. Central. They'll be launching from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Make a 4-orbit rendezvous to dock with the International Space Station in the afternoon U.S. time. We'll start our coverage then at 2 p.m., looking for a 2:45 p.m. docking. And then we'll start the welcome ceremony and hatch opening at 4 p.m. Central Time, where the 3 crew members aboard the Soyuz MS-15 will be greeted by the 6 crew members currently part of Expedition 60. After you tune into that coverage, make sure you see the completion of HTV's arrival to the International Space Station. We'll start our coverage just before 5 a.m. Central Time, again looking at a capture time at 6:15 a.m. A great insertion of HTV into orbit. Again, teams in HTV's Mission Control Center in Tsukuba will take over from here, working closely with the International Space Station Flight Control Room here in Houston, Texas, where HTV will eventually join its ultimate destination, the International Space Station. Until then, this is Mission Control Houston.